Hello and welcome back to Crime Mystic 8. Today we take a look into the ever-growing list of deaths linked to Russian President Vladimir Putin. It is easy to note by looking at Russian news that prominent Russian businessmen and executives seem to be dropping like flies. Except the news will label these deaths as apparent suicides or accidents. Of these deaths, 4 of them have come from the executives in the same company, Gazprom. Gazprom is an oil and gas company in Russia and has, over the last few years, experienced a fair amount of deaths within their staff. The first of these deaths is a man by the name of Leonid Shulman. Leonid worked as an Invest Transport Director at Gazprom. His death was ruled a suicide, with authorities claiming to have found a suicide note near his body. His net worth is estimated to be more than $400 million, according to some sources. Reports say that he was found dead in the bathroom of his cottage. His death was followed shortly after by the death of another Gazprom executive, Alexander Tyalakov. Alexander was found dead in the garage of his home from what was eventually listed as a suicide as well. His net worth is reported to be similar to that of Leonid Shulman. After that came the death of Vladislav Avayev, who had previously worked as vice president for Gazprom and had a net worth believed to be over $433 million. He was found dead along with his wife and children in his Moscow apartment. It didn't take long for authorities to list his death as a murder-suicide. Vladislav Avayev was also a Gazprom employee. One day after the death of Vladislav, yet another Gazprom name was found dead. Sergei Protosenya, deputy chairman of the board, who also had a net worth estimated of over $400 million, was found dead in his garden. His wife and daughter were found brutally murdered inside the house. In a not-so-shocking turn of events, the death was quickly listed as a murder-suicide. That makes 4 Gazprom executives that died of suicide within a short period of time. As shocking as that is, it is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Russian businessmen and executives turning up dead. A total of 39 of Russia's prominent businessmen and executives have died in the last few years, each of them being listed as an apparent accident or suicide. In 2023, it showed that 12 people had seemingly thrown themselves from windows, and another 7 had shot themselves in the head. Reports showed a major spike in suicides among some of the most important figures and oligarchs in Russia. Some of the explanations for death are as outlandish as claiming that the person died from toad poison. The apparent accidents and suicides of these figures have been widely reported on, making it almost impossible to ignore that people with ties to Putin seem to wind up dead more often than not. What's worse is that this is nothing unusual when it comes to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Deaths like these seem to stretch back almost 2 decades, with those who get in his way reported dead not long afterward. While these accidents and suicides are reported by Russian officials, there is plenty of reason to doubt them. In most cases, the family and friends of the deceased have come forward to say that they simply do not believe the reports to be true. They claim that there has to be more to these deaths than meets the eyes, with some of the reasons for death being so outrageous that it is physically impossible to believe. One such case is the death of Gennady Lopirev, a Russian military officer who died of leukemia only 2 days after diagnosis. There are no reports of the necessary signs of the illness in him, leading up to his death. Another strange case is that 2 of these men died in the same suspicious circumstances while staying in the same hotel. Grigory Kochinov, the creative director at a tech firm called Agama IT, died while officials were acting upon a search warrant of his home. While the officials were in the house, Grigory supposedly fell accidentally from his balcony and to his death. Vladimir Sungorkin, editor-in-chief of Komsomolskaya Pravda, died in September 2022 after reportedly suffering a stroke and suffocated while on his way to lunch. Honestly, the list of suspicious deaths linked to Putin could probably go on forever. The question always on everybody's mind is the why. Well, it is known to all that Russia is in the middle of a conflict that does not seem to be going in their favor. Sanctions have created a financial chokehold in Russia, which is precisely the purpose of sanctions. This financial crisis has forced Russian President Vladimir Putin to try and open new streams of funding for his war. It would be no surprise to anybody if Putin was trying to use the largest companies to funnel new streams of income to support this war. One thing is shockingly clear though. Anybody that says no to President Vladimir Putin is likely to die shortly after, either from an accident or suicide. While many prominent Russian spokespersons and reporters have claimed that there is nothing suspicious going on, it is hard to believe. Some Russians continue to believe that the increase in accidents or suicides is a result of the recent difficulties in Russia and the depreciation of quality of life within the country. Still, when faced with the kinds of accidents listed and the outlandish and ridiculous explanations of the deaths, that theory becomes increasingly difficult to believe. Ravi Maganov, the chair of one of the largest gas and oil integration companies in the world, Lukoil, apparently went to hospital with heart problems and depression, at which point he accidentally fell from the hospital window to his death. He had a net worth estimated to be nearly $500 million. Alexander Sobotin, board member of Lukoil, apparently died from experiencing a drug-induced heart attack during a supposed shamanic ritual, while other reports say he died from a poisonous toad. Magomed Abdullayev, former chairman of the government of the Republic of Dagestan, died accidentally when a car hit him while crossing the road. This is now being referred to sudden Russian death syndrome by those who follow these deaths closely. In 2023 alone, the list is already 19 names long, and we are not even at the end of the year yet. One thing is for sure, those who still remain are on edge. Some friends and family of those on the list have called for further investigation, finding it unthinkable that their loved ones could do such things to themselves or to their families. Of the list of 39 businessmen and executives who have died under mysterious circumstances, as many as 5 of them are listed as murder-suicides with multiple bodies found on the scene. The list of people does not include those who have been jailed for crimes that they are likely innocent of. While it might not have been the physical end of their life, they might never taste freedom again. Those who keep track of the deaths and follow Putin's doings closely do not expect sudden Russian death syndrome to stop or even to slow down. Some authorities state that the world must prepare itself to see many similar headlines that we'll find ourselves bored with it all. Some people have already experienced this, stating that the headlines come so often they do not know which they've read already and which they haven't. The most recent suspicious death at the time of this video is Valery Chekalov, who died along with Dmitry Utkin and Yevgeny Prigozhin in August 2023, when the business jet they were on crashed during a normal, routine, high-altitude flight from Moscow to St. Petersburg. All 3 were part of the Wagner Group in some way. Of the 3, Yevgeny Prigozhin had been a close friend of Vladimir Putin until he launched a rebellion against the president in June of 2023, just 2 months before he died. He had an estimated net worth of $1 billion. This list of names and suspicious deaths is expected to keep growing for as long as Putin is alive.